Hola community, welcome everybody to Blender Today Live, this weekly live stream where we share what's new in Blender, in the Blender community, Blender features, the people behind Blender even, because I don't have many announcements regarding the community today, but just the one that it really, it makes a huge difference, at least from the human side of Blender, of the Blender team. So the first episode of Blender Heads, a documentary style kind of behind the scenes of the life at Blender, at the Blender studio / institute / foundation. So you'll see Ton just maybe cutting cake for the rest of the team, or not agreeing with the logo for the Blender conference, while the rest of the team is like, hey, we need to finish an open movie, but we're dealing with this logo for the conference. A lot of the things that you don't really see when you are, when you just go to the conference and everything is done, for example. Also how the conference was set up, but also the team at the studio. I'm sure there will be even more behind the scenes, because this is just like the tip of the iceberg. There is so much that goes on during Blender itself, Blender development, but also Blender as a whole. So I hope you liked it. If you haven't seen it, it's in here in this same YouTube channel. So go check it out. It's 20 minutes or so. So it's a nice, make some coffee in the morning and watch it. It will be part of a series, hopefully, that will come out maybe every few months, just a catch up. Okay, what else? Let's see what's new in Blender. By the way, we are streaming live from home again until I fix the issues I have on sound related stuff on my computer at work. So there is a thread already. I can see people are writing. Sansul, thank you for making the thread. If you want to leave any questions, I'm gonna try to be answering those towards the end of the show. Everything is okay, sound, video, everything is nice. I like it here at home because it's very cozy. Like I'm making a render that I'm gonna have it hanging there, so it will be even more cozy. You know what else is cozy? Blender features. Said no one ever, but yeah, to me they are cozy. So there is a number of changes this week in cycles in the workbench. There is a new workbench. Sculpt, Paint, UV, Grease Pencil, Blender Video Sequence Editor. We haven't seen that updated in a while. The Compositor for Apple users. Great news in there. EEVEE / nodes / modeling IO, POTPOURRI, and a bit of everything. Let's start with some. Let's start with cycles. Not huge changes here. Actually, very small. There is one that caught my attention. It's a faster and more exact GGX BNDF sampling algorithm. What is it? Well, I asked the developers why it wasn't on the wiki release notes. And the reason is because it's not really that big of a deal. It's gonna make sampling of this kind of shading distribution GTX more accurate, faster, and more in line with EEVEE and other render engines. But it's so little that you're probably not gonna notice unless you use a very specific use case. What you are going to notice if you have an AMD Vega GPU is that in the builder boats, like in the ones, the daily builds, you may notice that it is slightly, well, you can't basically use it because it has been disabled due to compiler bug, and it will be enabled as soon as possible. But you're gonna notice if you really depend on this rendering cycles with AMD Vega GPUs, do not update since last Monday. Maybe it's a bit too late. What else? Oh, I have news, by the way, about 3.5 this week. Well, basically the news is that there will be no 3.5 beta this week. It has been postponed for 2 weeks. So until, not this week, I think February 15th or so, due to the change of this system, the migration from developer.blender.org system, which is called Fabricator, into the new one powered by GT. Not much from the user side of things. Well, mainly for reporting bugs, you're gonna see that the website is different and the workflow is a bit different, but it's a huge change for developers. Okay, what else you're gonna notice? If you have an Intel graphics GPU, you need to update your drivers on Windows. If you are using Windows, you better update because there have been some crashes and regressions in performance, actually. Not a crash, but a regression of 5% speed since last week or so. And speaking of anything, well, yeah, speaking of Intel, actually, the Intel Arc GPUs had an issue with the Nishida sky texture, which has been fixed. So it wasn't new, it was the feature. Then lastly, there is also a very small change that has to do with cycles and the rendering of multi-GGX shading. You shouldn't notice big changes, but if you do, please report them. I'm just mentioning this just as a PSA. So if you see something weird, you should keep an eye on it. Okay, Workbench. There is a new Workbench in the hood. It's called Workbench Next. It's experimental, and by the name you can probably guess that this is the next version of the Workbench engine, which is also known as the solid view, what you see like in Blender when in this view. This is powered by the Workbench engine, but of course you can also select it from the render engine drop down if you want to do like play blasts, for example. This engine is work in progress. It has many things missing, volume, hair rendering, but it is exciting to see that it's moving forward the same way that the EEVEE engine is moving into the next generation to support more modern layouts and more optimizations, more modern stuff, and Vulkan, all of that. It's also happening to the Workbench engine. Super nice. There's already some things that have been fixed. For example, the in front, the old X-ray setting now works with depth of field and shadows, which didn't before. That's super cool. And the sampling viewport setting is now used when you use the render mode. When you're in render mode, it will be used, the viewport setting in the viewport. Makes sense. And in texture mode, the texture materials also use the material properties. Previously, only the non-texture materials would show those textures. So yes, still lots left. Actually, this is the very first commit, only one change so far as I could see in the Workbench Next engine, but it's cool to see that they are working on this. As well as it's cool to see that the sculpt/painting department is working on stuff. People always ask about when is sculpting gonna get some work. Well, there is a branch called SCULPT Dev that is getting some action already. So there will be updates. The same with the 3D texturing side of Blender. I was talking today with Jeroen, the author of this patch, and he mentions that for this year he will try to split his working months, like 1 month into 3D texturing and another month into Vulkan, and then that way try to push both projects at the same time. The 3D texturing fix for this week is about seam bleeding on manifold parts of the mesh. What is seam bleeding? Well, when you are 3D painting on a mesh and you reach a seam, like a seam. When you mark an edge as a seam to split your UVs, it could happen that you're painting in 3D and it looks all fine, maybe in 3D, but if you look at the texture is actually doing all kinds of stuff, or like the bleeding, the edge is actually bleeding color into another part of the map. So if you have a very tight UV, you may run into a texture like you're painting one side and it's affecting other areas of your mesh. You don't want that. So it's good to see that the 3D texturing workflow is being, it is being worked on. Performance-wise also, it should be much faster. What else? Sculpting. Performance. PVBH node splitting for texture paint. So it's funny though that this is in the Sculpt module. But yeah, this is for texture paint. So when you're texture painting in sculpt mode, you are now you should feel that it goes faster because it's using the PBVH, this model that makes things like calculates all your mesh and makes it so it is faster while you're painting. The increased performance you should notice better when you're working on large textures on low poly meshes. So it could be the case, right? Low poly meshes, maybe you're doing a character for a game and then you paint on higher texture maps. This should help with that. And in general, I guess low poly meshes, like higher poly meshes, also going to be benefit. Why would it only be low poly? Is it like a check if faces less than? No, I think it should be. It's probably for all cases. The next change has to do with shortcuts. The title of the commit goes as follows: Resolve Shift R shortcut conflicts. The Shift R shortcut has been, well, there have been bug reports about conflicts in the same shortcut being used for different things in different modes. This should be fixed now by removing the angle controls shortcuts in sculpt mode, and then remapping the voxel, din topo, and hair resolution shortcuts to R, depending on whatever you are selected. So if your voxel remesh will be R unless for example, you have din topo enabled, because din topo and voxel remeshing, they are not compatible. You either have one or the other. The same shortcut can be used for different effects. Not a huge fan of using the same shortcut personally for different things in the same mode, because you have to keep you have to remember what is exactly what you were doing or which mode you're in, and but not even the mode, because the mode is the same, sculpt mode, but it's just the different settings that you have on and affect the shortcut. I don't know. Can you think of a better solution though? Because this solves it. Although R for rotate, what happens when we support, like in sculpt mode, to add primitive object that you can transform around? You also want to have R for rotating a mesh, a piece of a mesh, or like a mask out an area and then rotate with R, right? So I don't know. I don't think we should use G, S, and R. But I mean, that feature is not even there. So why even saving a part of the shortcut for something that it's not even there? That sounded like a quote from Elephant's Dream. Why should I don't know. It's something about that isn't there, Emo. No, Prug. What can you tell me then, Prug? Next change also has to do with shortcuts. Add numpad alias for number keymap entries in the expand model map. So when using the expand tool, you could use the numbers on your keyboard, like the row on top of your keyboard, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way, but not the numpad. This has been fixed now by Joe and has made it so the numpad keys are also valid for changing the expand map. Well, it's actually for changing the type of fall-off: topology, geodesic, topology diagonals, or spherical. And that is it for Sculpt and Paint. There is one change in the UV department. The change it's a new feature in the select similar operator that allows you to select, where, for example, when you have a face selected, you can choose, I don't know, faces of the same similar area and so on and so forth. The two new entries, one is similar object, with which I think similar object is a bit weird because objects are unique in Blender. They can have same object data, but I think by reading at this commit that it makes it so, for example, if you have a face selected and you have multiple objects that share the same face, it would or a similar, the same object basically, it would select the same face into different objects, into those different objects, but only when you have multiple objects selected. The other entry is called similar winding, which I didn't know this word. I had to look it up. Winding means the twist, basically the direction of the face, or how, in which direction it is twisted, for example. So either up or down, like orientation with it. So similar winding will select faces which have the same winding. Are they facing upwards or downwards? So I think in Blender we call it orientation. I don't know why they choose the word winding, which is probably fine for native English speaker, but most of the people that use Blender are non-native English speakers. So I asked the developers if they could add a tooltip, because by looking at the code I can see that there are no tooltips. And is it called winding? Winding, not winding. But it's like wind. Winding. Okay, winding. Thank you for fixing my English. Winding, similar winding. Again, don't we use the word orientation, people, native English speakers? Isn't it the same as orientation? In Blender 3D world. Winding is when you slap a baby on its back to help evacuate the flatulation. Oh, that is so not what this operator does in the UV editor. But thanks for the explanation, 3D Illusions. So winding, cool. Anyways, the English does not make sense, Pablo. It's okay. Okay, so winding. Again, tell me, isn't it the same as orientation? Maybe we should call it that way, because in Blender, to know about the orientation of a face, you just enable face orientation. You don't do face winding, right? Let me know. Next changes are related to Grease Pencil. In Grease Pencil, we have two new entries. One has to do with the API, and the other one is a UI change to the length value in the slider in the simplify modifier. This modifier had a very conservative value for basically to have the minimum value in the UI, and this has been tweaked. So now you should be able to go basically in the UI range to have the same value, like 0.005, but on the actual UI, you know, in Blender the UI elements have two ranges. The range that you see here in the UI, right, like in the view, and then you also have another value, which is what you would change in the when you select it and then enter the number manually. This is often required when you're doing something that it doesn't really, you know, or maybe values that shouldn't be entered. But in this case, it is it's accepted. For example, don't do it, but the subdivision modifier, the subdivision levels in the UI, they only go to 6, which is still pretty high. I would probably lower that to like 4, just so people don't break their computers. But if you actually enter the value manually, you can enter higher values. Do not try at home, please. The other change that has to do with Grease Pencil, it's in the API. You can now access the time that the starting time of a stroke and the time overall of that stroke in Python. So if you're making add-ons that use this feature that was introduced recently, also that has to do with the natural time for drawing, this is now exposed in the API. In this commit, though, this was set to time or init time, but now this has been changed as on today in master for time_start. Just a heads up. But if you compile Blender, you're gonna find this change already done. The next change has to do with the video sequence editor. This is kind of huge, and actually it's a pity that I'm not at the office, because there was an image that was saved on the local servers by Jeroen, showing how much of a big deal it is. The change is as follows. Improve image transform quality when exporting. Yep, it could happen that for example, you have an image, you rotate it, you scale it, and then when exporting, it would look ugly, to say the least. Like the edges will be all jaggy because the sampling wasn't very nice. Basically, it would use a linear or the nearest sampling, and it would look ugly, and the anti-alias will be terrible. Not anymore. Now there is a new change. There is a new option that is called, let's look at the code. How else are you going to know, right? So number of subsamples to use, and it's a drop down menu option. Basically, it's one more option in the properties of the image that you can choose. In the same place where you can choose linear or nearest. Okay. Next, looking at the comments, by the way, don't forget to smash the like button, says Rafael Hassel, and don't smash the like button. Press it gently. Give it a little nudge, a little clink. Press gently the like button if you want to help these videos be discovered. If you even think that these videos are worth sharing. You know what's worth sharing? The improvements that developers have been doing also to the to general changes in Blender, like core stuff, such as imbuff. What is imbuff? It's image buffer. It's basically what Blender uses to show you stuff on screen and to transform the images. So in the image editor or in the video sequence editor, this has been improved, so it should be much faster. Why? Because right now, and before this change, whenever there was you would transform an image, everything would be updated, even the areas that were not affected. Not anymore. Now the transform region of an image will be only the region that is actually transformed. It will be calculated by this transformation, which means that if you only move an image a little bit, it's going to be way faster. If you move the entire image all over the viewport, it's not going to make a big of a difference, but this can speed up like a ton your sequencer, and also image transform, like the image editor. I like when they do these changes that are in the core of Blender, so it ripples all over the system. Next, handle drivers when duplicating strips. Yep, have you ever noticed that if you had a video sequencer strip with a driver attached to it, and then you would duplicate this strip, then things would go crazy or lost forever? Not anymore. Now the duplication of strips will handle keyframe animation and drivers properly. So it's a fix. Yay. Next change, it's an operator. This is a new feature. It's have you ever run into having a scene strip in the video sequence editor, but I don't know, you go into that scene, you change the frame range, and then find out that you basically don't know about it. There is no way to update it. You have to go to the scene, remember the number, go back to the video editor, and then adjust it accordingly. Well, now there is an operator that allows you to update the scene frame range for that scene. You can also select all the scene strips and then run this operator, and it should update the frame range for that strip. However, reading on this commit, the length of the strip will not be changed. to, I guess, to not mess on with your edit. I don't know. I was my first reaction to this was like, maybe it could be an option of the operator. You know, one of those adjust last operation settings, because maybe sometimes you do want to have the strip change size, even if you would lose, but at least you get some kind of visual feedback. Although there is the overlay that lets you see the offsets. So actually, if I have another scene, for example, and my scene has a frame range that is short, if I go to this scene, I add this scene. All right. So this is the length of my scene. I go to the other scene, I change, I make it shorter. I should see, well, this still thinks it's like it's wrong. So what if I reload? Where is this operator? Add update scene frame. Where is it? It's in the sequencer delete, sequencer. It's in a menu. Strip. It's one of those settings. Maybe I can just search for it. Reload. What's the name of it? Update scene frame range. Update. Oh, this was added today. So it's still not in my build, of course. This is too bleeding edge. I still don't have it on my build. Anyway, if you find it, then what I mean was that if you update this, the old way of doing it would be to delete the strip and add it again. Like we are in which year? There you go. Now it has the right length. Now you don't have to. There is an operator for that, but I don't know where it is. Okay, next. That is it for the video sequence editor. The compositor has good news for Apple users. Since today, actually, this change was done today, just a few hours ago, so wait until tomorrow for downloading the builder.blender, the experimental build, the nightlies, because now you can use the real-time compositor. Yay! Welcome to the future. I've been using the real-time compositor, and it's just amazing. Like I don't know if I'm gonna crash my computer, but I've been working on a scene that has it enabled, and even though it has some things that, like when you're using specific, like I changed the color a lot, and the glows sometimes are, maybe they gets a bit confused, especially when they do border, like there's that issue, because I'm also like doing all kinds of weird stuff with my setup. But if I disable, like it doesn't seem to use any, like I don't see any difference in performance. That's amazing. Like viewport compositor setup not fully supported even. Okay, so there is some stuff here that are not supported. I don't mind, but I don't see any difference in speed. It's amazing. It's like for free, compositing for free. So I can't wait until this viewport compositor is actually being used in the old compositor once it gets ported over. Oh, actually, now that I think of it, in the compositor we should see some nodes. There should be some nodes that have like a some of them should have like an error, like a info icon that you can click to see what is that's not supported. Next. More news to Apple users. Even in EEVEE, there is a performance improvement on shaders. So like a general performance improvement. About 1.5 to 2 times the performance uplift on specific shaders affected. So it doesn't mention which shaders, but but diffuse. It says something about diffuse. No, light proof, filter, diffuse, overlays, or maybe I would say shaders. Anyway, good news. Anyway, for everyone using Apple devices. It's good to see Apple that it's no longer so behind. There was a comment the other day on one of the live streams, I think, mentioning like, hey, what is it? Everybody's everything for Apple, and what are the, like, everybody else is just stuck with the same performance. Well, because the performance is already quite fast for other systems. It was like Apple that was lagging behind. So now they're catching up, and it's not even there yet. You can't compare a 4090 to an M2, right? It's just completely different things. But it's good to see that at least it's not so behind, and the overall UI and the glitches everywhere should be being brushed off slowly. Okay, let's talk about nodes. Nodes. Yes, one feature by the one and only Leon. Leon, thanks for working on these little things here and there, and just keep like at it, because the patch actually has been around for a while, but now this has been committed on a Saturday. What is it? The new feature applies to all the node editors, so shading, geometry nodes everywhere. It's a feature that allows you to swap the links that you're about to connect. So let's see it in action and then read what's new. So here, there you go. Leon even makes nice videos. Isn't that amazing? So as you can see now, when you drag a link on top of another link, now you can hold Alt to alternate or like swap the links. So you don't have to connect one and then connect the other. You can just, it's a quick shortcut to swap one with another. That's so cool. Quality of life. Look at the amount of love that is getting. Leon, come to Amsterdam. Join us. Join the Blender. Join the Blender. Just in general, just join the Blender. You already joined. You're part of the Blend. But come. We have cookies. And cake, as you can see in the Blender, on the Blender Heads stream video. Oh yeah, actually that was the video demonstration, but the commit itself had a description about the Alt key and no, nothing else worth mentioning. Oh, it even tackles, it should work well on light themes and dark themes as well. Nice. Okay, the next change is a performance improvement that has to do with the node editor and geometry nodes. The sorting of topology nodes apparently is very expensive. Which ones are the topology nodes? Well, we can look at the menu now, the new menu that has mesh, topology, all these nodes. Now should be faster thanks to some internal skipping of sorting stuff. How much faster? 6 times faster when the weights are a single value. So that's quite a optimization. Thanks, Hans. The next optimization, also by Hans, has to do with the points of a curve node. Points of curve node. This optimization has to do when calculating the points. Apparently, the start, the offset of a point is already there, so no need to calculate it. Yay! And this has to do with nodes for procedural hair. And some asset bundles are coming. I heard. I didn't hear. Actually, I read. Next, don't show warning in modifier with multiple geometry inputs. Oh yeah, I ran into this the other day and I was so confused. There will be a warning shown that would say the node group can only have one geometry input, which is understandable, but the thing is that sometimes you want multiple geometry inputs when you're using the node setup, not as a modifier, but as a node group. you often want to have multiple geometries, and this would lead to an error, to a warning, and it was just confusing. So now that's not going to be a limitation anymore, and they're even considering changes for the future when you could choose and pass an object into a geometry socket. Interesting. Last but not least, it is a change related to UV editor, like UV editing with geometry nodes. The UV editor would lack a redraw, so you could be tweaking your UVs in the geometry nodes system, and the UV editor wouldn't be showing things in real time, all the updates. So now it will. Yay for that. You know what else? Yay for modeling changes, improvements, tweaks, performance improvements, and a new operator. This new operator is called flip quad tessellation. So have you ever run, you probably have run into, like when you have a mesh like this, and you run into these situations where for example, there is a face here that is actually a quad, but Blender decided to split it in this way, even though it's a quad. There is no triangle here. Well, internally everything has to be triangles, right? For GPUs to be happy, for the systems to be happy. But Blender decided that this would be the way it's tessellated. Not anymore. Now there is a way to flip that. You can go to the face menu or Control F, face data, flip quad tessellation, and then that will tell Blender to tessellate it in a different direction. So now you don't have to just deal with, or like the other solution would be to like split this with Control T, triangulate, and then rotate it. That now it's no longer the case. So whatever quads you had issues with, now this is also very common. Like when you put it in that way, yeah, or way too in, and then you get to choose now. Optimizations, merge by distance. It's now faster. How much faster? Well, an operation, for example, that would take 10 milliseconds now takes 3.2 milliseconds on the worst case. But in general, it should be about twice as fast to use the merge by distance, or also known for the veterans here, the remove doubles. If you've been around for long enough, it was called remove doubles, now merge by distance. The last change has to do with the snapping system in Blender. The snap point in the property snap point in Blender has been around for a while, but apparently there is no documentation, not much documentation, and by looking at the code, it is possible to notice that it serves to set a target snap point, and it's being used internally but hidden, not great, in the redo panel, in the adjust last operation. So now this dependency has been removed from the tool setting, and the code has been cleaned up, and the feature has been exposed, so at least you can tweak it now. It's not going to be doing things for you. Okay, time to talk about input and output, I/O. The USD format, it's hot stuff. Everybody's using it in the industry. In the Blender conference, there was a big panel. It was crowded, no more room left for people to come and discuss about USD. Well, we have great news for those, because Blender now supports importing USDZ or Z. The USD zip format is basically one file that is a zip. Internally, it's a zip, but inside can contain textures and other USD files, and it's super handy because it's one file to rule them all. So yay for that. There has been a few options added. So first, USDZ is now supported. It's a list. It's in the list of supported extensions, and there are new USD import options to copy the textures from the USD USDZ archives. The textures may be imported as pack data by default or into a folder in your disk. There is also some extended logic for you importing USD materials to handle these package relative texture assets paths. So the new options are: 1. Import textures. So the behavior when importing the textures from a USD archive. So you can import it as regular, as a pack data, or you can also choose assign a texture directory path specific to where to copy the textures into. And there is another option that it's to deal with the file name collisions. What happens when your file names like match? What happens? What do you do? Well, you can override, or you can use the existing images. The import texture menu options show you import none, so do not import textures, packed to pack them, and copy. And this is exactly what I just told you about. And the file name menu collision is, use existing or override. I think I read this before, so I knew what you was doing, and then here I should have just skipped it. Hey, great news! USDZ is now supported in Blender. Yay! Great day for pipelines all around the industry. You know what else? USD Preview. It's a settings. It's a feature that was around, but it was experimental. It's been around in Blender already for a few releases at least. I would say 2-3 releases, but it was experimental. Well, that's no longer the case. It's no longer experimental. Enough people have tested the feature and confirmed that it is useful. It is useful and usable. And also, in the UI, the experimental box has been removed, and there is a new materials box that groups both the import USD preview surface and the set material blend and the material collision mode settings all in one box. So yay for that. Another feature, speaking of USD materials, is that you can import unused materials. So those materials that are not attached to any surface, you can still import them, and they will be marked as a fake user, or like the shield icon. If you want to bring them, because before they would be, you have to do a workaround and add them to a mesh that maybe you don't use, but you still wanted to bring it over. So it's good to see that it's being worked on. The next change is the USD exports past USD checker. Well, in the latest, I don't know if it's the latest, but one of the in a recent version of USD 22.11, importing USD files that has been exported from Blender would trigger errors. That's not great. You know, you don't want the Blender to be like triggering errors in other pipelines. So this has been fixed. Apparently the changes were like the default primitive wasn't set. Material binding API changes and remove the previous scope in the shader hierarchy because no longer valid, because now it is supported. And finally, the last change has to do with tests. This is not user facing. This is on the developer's side, but this helps to have an automatic way to test if USD is working or not, if something broke for whatever reason. So it's not user facing, but it is in a way because it makes things more stable, easy to maintain. That is all for the I/O. Actually, I only have 3 more things, so it's a bit of a potpourri section. Python API. Have you ever made an add-on? Have you ever tried to use the UI lists, like shape keys, materials, like the widget for UI lists? You probably remember that you had to do all kinds of, like you have to redefine it every time. It wasn't that simple. It wasn't like a copy-paste. Well, now there is a copy-paste method. Basically, there is a whole new module that was added that is called generic UI list to collection properties. So the UI list example actually you can see it in Blender already. If you go to scripting and look at Python UI list generic, this is a example text that shows you how this new system works. So you basically import from BL UI, import generic UI list, and then draw UI list. In the draw UI list, you basically just pass on the layout, context, the context path, and the active ID context path. And with this, Blender will know what to do, and it will make it for you with a, well, actually I can just run this and you should add it to my category, my label. No, what is it? View. That's not really showing anything. Great. Oh, it's throwing an error. Required only 2 arguments. Did I break it already? Or is it failing? No, it is failing. Out of the box. All right, I need to have a word with the mater tomorrow. Hey, Matt. He is the mater. He's the rigger at the studio. At the Blender studio. But anyway, it should be an easy way to make your own UI lists with like up, down buttons and add, remove, all of the stuff without you having to define every time what the add button does, what the remove button does, and all that. So next, it's also related to the Python API, and now there is a method for reordering modifiers. Yay, you don't have to hard code, like you have to use operators. Now there is an actual method in object modifiers.move. And last but not least, in the Grease Pencil Tools add-on, there is a few new features. The feature is called Layer Navigator, and it replaces the Y shortcut. It overrides it with the default layer menu pop-up with a new menu pop-up designed for full screen work. I guess they are just testing this feature, because why would they? What would they? I guess it's mainly for. Why would they override an existing menu for full screen work? It should be just a different setting, I guess. But also this Grease Pencil Tools add-on works in a way to test features before they go mainstream, before they change the complete workflow on how accessing layers, for example. But it seems pretty neat, and there is even more shortcuts enabled while the layer navigator is up. There is no pictures, but I bet it's great. Maybe there is on the wiki. Wiki.blender.org. Release notes 3.5 alpha for another 2 weeks. Oh no, that means there will be more features. Add-ons, story pencil. No, still not here. Anyway, there will be eventually, I bet. That is all. I think I'm done with sharing what's new. Oh wait, questions. Yeah, we had a thread with questions. Okay, let me drink a bit of water. Let's go to the website. Let's refresh the page just to make sure that everything is. Oh, it's 22 comments. People. Okay, let's load more, and let's load. Okay, first let's go to the ones that have the most votes. The first one is J Pasta. Hi J Pasta. Hi, hope you're doing well. Do you think matrix nodes could be coming to geometry nodes? Those would be really useful for custom deformers. What would be the use case? Like, what is a custom deformer? I think this would be a good opportunity to use right-click select, because the developers from Grease Pencil, I'm still thinking of Grease Pencil, of geometry nodes, they do look at the right-click select proposals. So maybe this would be a good opportunity to ask for a use case, to make a blend file, and show how you would use it. The next question by Jablaya says, "Hi Pablo, hope you're doing well. Hope you too. I had a question regarding the curve nodes, float, curve, RGB curves, etc. With the geometry nodes popularity and the real-time compositor on the way, it seems like they would need an overhaul. It would be great to have the curve graph as output sockets for geometry nodes. It would also be awesome if when we move the curve points with the mouse, the updating of whatever it controls what's done in real time, not only when the release button." Actually, in Blender 2.5 alpha, like I'm talking 2009, 2010, no, 2009, Blender would change like the moment you change anything in the UI, it would update. Yeah, it would update everything in real time. It was a bit much, and that well, basically could imagine like 12 years ago, 13 years ago, and things could get slow really quickly. I think nowadays it would still be the case. I wonder if that could be on a per node setting, but sometimes those curves, you like, how about that same curve widget? Like Blender uses the same curve widget for all kinds of stuff, and if, for example, for color management, this could be real time, right? But the same widget is also used for things like the custom profile in bevels, for example, and this can be slow to update. So there again, an exception and then more exceptions. So yeah, I guess it has to be on a per widget case, but yeah, I would love that for, especially now with the real-time compositor, not for the current compositor. And again, that's another exception. One compositor, yes, but no for the real-time one. And that can be annoying. So I think it's a bit too early right now to go for something like that. Yeah, unless it's something that developers can say, okay, this widget can be real-time and this one can't. But again, with geometry nodes, that will be very slow. If you're like have a float curve, it can be very slow and a bit annoying also, because you're just trying to match a perfect point somewhere in that graph and the whole tree keeps changing. So the GPU is, you know, all like full power trying to recalculate the viewport, but you just want to be very precise with the way you move your, I don't know, maybe like holding some key, I don't know. Anyway, next change, well, would be great to have the curve graph as output sockets for geometry nodes. That would be pretty neat. Why don't we start with something that is a bit simple? I don't know if it's simpler, but come up with a mockup for that. And while you're doing that, please also consider color ramps. I think color ramps are way simpler because they only have a position and a color and a position. So if we could expose those as inputs, outputs, and somehow use them, that UI could be used for other parts like the core widget. Maybe with panels, sub panels in nodes, something that the principal BSDF v2 should tackle. Next question by Blend Creator. I have a short question about geometry nodes. Will there be something like a set action node, which you can change the actions of an armature, for example? I don't think that has to do with geometry nodes. I think that is more like a object, because those are object level stuff. And geometry nodes is a modifier that, you know, works on the mesh data level, it doesn't add new modifiers, right? It doesn't affect the object itself. It affects the object data. So something like that, I think it would be more for object or collection modifiers, object modifiers, as in, I mean, object nodes, collection nodes. Next question. Is there any plans to add bone rigs or shape keys to the new hair object? Can we get bones or controllers inside of geometry nodes in the future? I bet, but not geometry nodes. That is rigging nodes. That's something else, I think. It's not really geometry nodes. We could leave geometry nodes for geometry stuff and then do, again, simulation nodes deals with other objects with collections. What else? And can we have bone rigs or shape keys to the new hair object? I think they will come eventually. The new hair object, it's in its baby stage. The next question. Hello, Pablo. I hope you're having a great day. I am. I don't know how late am I. Oh, it's almost 1 hour since I've been streaming. Okay, let's do 5 more questions. It's a great day, and the days are slowly getting. Oh no, it's dark. When I started the live stream, that it was light. Now you can see how dark it got. The next question. Shad Bolt says, I'm somewhat confused about the long-term plan for the Everything Nodes project. With the integration of more and more nodes for various systems in Blender, what does the idea finalized system look like? Is it one panel with a ton of nodes that interact with all the areas of Blender, or is Blender with like 15 different node workspaces? I think the way we're moving forward is a bunch of different node workspaces, but there has been talks about, like, you know, just thinking in the future of having a way to jump from one node tree into another node tree, like jump around either with like pages or with like portal nodes. So this could go into other editors. You could go from, you know, just to keep things organized. But I think having a huge node tree with all of it, I think at some point you should start, just gets too much. So having some sort of separation, I kind of like that. However, it is a bit annoying sometimes, like when you are, I use shortcuts to switch between the shading nodes and the geometry nodes. Like I have, this is geometry nodes, then 1, 2 material shading nodes, and then compositor, now the textures, which is useless at the moment, and then just these 2. So, oh, actually I can go back. No, Control Shift R, Control R, no, Control Shift. Actually, right now, because Shift F3 allows you to rotate, cycle between them, but Shift Control, I know, Control Shift F3 could go backwards, but no, it doesn't. But no, sometimes I felt the need for speed. Now, sometimes I felt the need for this over here to be expanded. Like if I have the text editor over here, and then I try to, well, if I have developer extras on, if I edit source and I do like expand true, this, of having this expanded so I can quickly change with one button. This is how it used to be, by the way. And then, yeah, the line style, which is only when freestyle is on. Why is it even here? This should only be show up when freestyle is on, right? But anyway, the world and the object would be more, yeah, would be easier to access if they were expanded. And with this reasoning, I was this close of making my own add-on to show geometry nodes also here. So you can go from geometry nodes to world and to material all in one place. But anyway, do you think like the expand should be on by default? The downside is that if you're just learning, you don't know that you're in object or in world unless you click on this. But I mean, I guess the same applies to this, right? You know these are the shading view modes, but at some point you just learn it, and you only have to learn it once. So yeah, let me know, leave a comment or share in the chat. But yeah, let me know if it's something that, as you can see, it's just the one line, expand through. So let me know, what do you think? The next change, the next question, number 4, is by Barf Garbage. And I'm reading this because in this order, because this one have been voted by the community, but I'm gonna go to the bottom to answer the ones first asks by the community. Brother, hey brother Barf Garbage, I tell you that I'm vexed for yesterday. I wanted to vex. What is vexed? Has to do with vertex, vex, difficult and much debated, of a problem or issue, annoyed, frustrated or worried. I'm very vexed with you. Okay, so you are worried or frustrated for yesterday. I wanted to make a cheeky little animation, but when I linked in the character collection, the rig.ui Python file that Rigify uses to generate the custom properties for the rig, did not get linked, and I had to manually go look for it like some sort of Neanderthal. Yeah, you wish Neanderthals would know Python, linking Python files. We would be in the year 3000 now. Since materials and textures are included when linking a character, shouldn't it be expected for scripts to be included? No. This should be an explicit thing that you do, because scripts can do all sorts of things. I mean, Rigify could be whitelisted to be, as in, like allow listed to be included, but scripts can do all sorts of things on your computer. Don't just go and start like linking. You know, you can download a character from somewhere, and if the person that made it with bad intentions, it could be yeah, not great. So no, this should be a scripts should be treated with care. And next, the emoji. Okay, so I'm gonna go to read the first ones and in the order they were posted. The next question by Sangsul, number 3, I believe, is, hey Pablo, I hope you're having a great day. I am having a great day because you made this thread, so thank you. This isn't really about Blender itself, but more about the community aspect of it. Okay. You should check out SpeedChar on YouTube. He's a professional character artist who switched to Blender for sculpting for production after using ZBrush for over a decade. He's not only using Blender for work, but also he streams on YouTube and sculpts production level characters in Blender in 1 or 2 hours. Here he's sculpting a stylized version of Kratos from God of War. That's pretty cool. Nice. SpeedChar Live. Shout out to him. I wonder what is his setup. Like, did he change many things? Like, did he made Blender into ZBrush, or did he try to learn how the Blender way of doing things here? Yes. I'm gonna ask Julian Kasper at the studio if he's in touch with this person, because it would be great to have him to give feedback in the sculpt system. Next question, next item. The Blender 2023 roadmap seems amazing, and hopefully we'll get most of it before the end of the year. But there was no mention of node-based layer texturing, which was part of the 2022 roadmap. Is there any news about it? Actually, the first version of that document that you've seen, we're talking about the Blender.org projects to look forward to in 2023. So it mentions all of the projects such as Vulkan, real-time viewport compositing, and so on and so forth, that are, you know, to look forward to this year. The first version of this post included the 3D, the texture layer, the texture basically system in Blender. This was also added in the last year's, but last year's was a bit too, I would say, optimistic, and maybe it was a bit too early to publish. For example, last year, the focus was particles, it said in the blog post. However, the team, after discussing this, decided to not go with like particles yet, because for you would first need like curve improvements, and that's when the curve system got improved. And then, okay, particles can use curves, and then simulation can use curves to be hair, like dynamic hair. And the same, I think, goes for texturing. The layer texture project is not something that can be like done very easily. It really touches all areas. I mentioned this last week. As you can see today, we saw some improvements in the performance and the seam bleeding of the texture painting in the viewport. The asset brush, the brush assets system is being worked on. There is even a branch for that. It's just many layers, and I think there is only one developer that was working on it at the moment, which is Brecht. And unfortunately, Brecht is now working on Git on improving the developer.blender.org system to move to the new system. And there is a limited amount of people that can work on such a big projects. I hope, and this is a personal opinion, but I hope the community really appreciates and values how far can Blender as an organization go, and the cost of sticking with open source software. Like moving to this new system, because this one it's just not maintained anymore. It's taking weeks of work of the top developers. The people that made Cycles X basically are working on the web, on a website, basically to improve the system for development. So Blender could be using GitHub and it would save so much time, but no, because we stick to open source only. And I hope the community really sees that, really sees the value in that Blender is contributing back to open source, not only as Blender, but also in Git, but basically all the systems that we use. You know, we use, I don't know, we use WordPress, we use this system, Git, we use, everything is open source. And sometimes the cost is huge. It's much more like the store. We could be using Shopify. No, we're using our own system. We could be using, I don't know, so many commercial systems to make our life easier, but we choose to go with open source. And I really hope that the community sees the value in that things take time. Yeah, now we're not getting texture improvement, cycles improvement, because the developer is working on a website for it. Why? Because we love open source. We think that keeping things open is important. Anyway, sorry for the rant. Next, these are minor and major at the same time. Is there any update about grouping and light linking? No, there's none. I found a 5-year-old post about grouping. Well, light groups is there, right? Might not be the same thing, but close. Also, there is a right-click select about. Oh no. Real grouping system. Yeah, and I don't think this applies anymore, because this is 5 years ago. This is before collections altogether. And light linking, no. I'm the first person to ask. Oh, today I asked even about light linking, and yeah, it's I don't know. I feel like maybe it's a lack of motivation. Maybe if we would come up with a nice mock-up about the light linking, what was the blog post? No, this is light linking, like this already, just by looking at it, this is not great. Like two UI lists in one. There is nowhere in Blender is like this. So okay, just from the get-go, no. And I think it's gonna require way more than this to you know, to make a nice proposal. And there is a thread here. There is actually a blog, an entry from when 2019. So this is already way outdated. This is from before Cycles X. So yeah, linking is not working. That is the main task. Yeah. No, it will require someone from the community to jump in and own the project. Like there is not even like a user story, like a user journey. What's the process? How does it work? What happens if you're using I don't know, light groups and light linking? What is the UI for it? How do you choose? Is it with collections? Is it collection based or is it object based? There is so many unknowns that if someone from the community can come in and okay, let's think about it and let's say, okay, as a user, I want to have this character be lit by only this light, but not all the other lights. How does it work? Okay, my character is in a collection. Okay, can I tell this light to be in a collection? Where do I set it? Do I set it in the light settings, in the object settings? Is it the object that has to select a collection where to be lit from? Or what? What happens with the other lights? Are they include or exclude? By default, all the objects have included all the lights or not. Then what? Are we required to have always a collection in a light? Or, sorry, a light in a collection? Can the scene collection, the main collection, be part of this group or not? There is so many questions, unknowns, that even I feel bad for saying like, hey, add light linking, without even telling them, okay, this is how I think it should work. Anyways, next. And okay, 2 more questions. Finn says, hi Pablo, I hope you're having a great Monday. Odd question, is there any web API to get the current version download link? No, but there, the team is working on it. It's in the plans. We want to do it not only to get the current Blender version, but also because there is not just one version available. There is many. There is at least one LTS. Sometimes there is 2 LTSs, and there is an active version, and there is the upcoming version. So there is like right now it's 3.4.1 plus 3.3.3 LTS plus 293.13 or so. Anyway, 3. So it has to be discussed, but yes, we have this. It's on the to-do list. I want it for Blender.org. So it's needed for many things, included the extensions platform website. Oh no, the last question is like a huge question. All right, so I'm gonna skip this. Let me see if I can answer without reading the rest of the comments. That's really bad. Do you know if Blender Foundation, sooner or later, will provide significant attention and resources to modeling? Not that no, I can't say. Blender Foundation as it is doesn't really define this kind of goals. These initiatives usually come from the module itself. And right now the modeling module, I don't see it being very active. It's the UV side of things are getting some attention, but the modeling side of things are no, not so far. So everybody's welcome to join and help with this, as in like, hey, these are first tackle the things that are broken, that need fixing, right? Like the extended extrude, for example, or yeah, and then think of new features. And again, can those features be done with geometry nodes? Maybe parametric modeling and somehow applying geometry nodes setups as operators could make it work, right? Again, many questions and to be... Oh, actually, yeah, you mentioned the selective extrude to be answered. Sorry if I didn't reply what you were hoping for. And sorry for all the other questions that I didn't get to answer, but I'm way past time. So I think I'm gonna call it. And next week I'm gonna be back at around the same time. Definitely the same day, Monday. Well, definitely, nothing is definite. Now get to hopeful. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great week. I will see you next time. Same time, same place. For another episode of Blender Today Live. Have a great evening. See you. Great week. Great everything. Go download Blender, share it, and use it, and make cool stuff, and post it everywhere. Ciao.